A peaceful town turned into a real-life nightmare in the blink of an eye. Wadsworth, Ohio was rocked by the horrifying murder of 98-year-old Margaret Douglas, a beloved neighbor and grandmother. What the community didn't know was that the killer was someone they all knew, someone hiding in plain sight. As the investigation unfolded, the truth revealed was darker and more twisted than anyone could have imagined. This is the story of how a quiet town's trust was broken, and how the police raced against time to catch a killer who was closer than anyone could have even imagined. Margaret Douglas was not your ordinary elderly neighbor. At 98 years old, she was full of life, spending her days gardening, reading, and chatting with the people who adored her in her close-knit community. Margaret was so loved by everyone around her that she felt safe enough to leave her doors unlocked, even at night. After her husband's death, Margaret ended up living alone. Her nephew, Howard Ledger, and his wife Cindy came by to visit from time to time. They constantly suggested that Margaret secure her home better with a security system, but she always brushed off their concerns because she was confident that her community would protect her. Little did she know, this blind trust would become her greatest mistake. On April 4th, 2018, Howard tried calling Margaret, but she did not answer the phone. He wasn't worried about her missing the call because he knew his aunt had many hobbies, so she was probably just out and about. But as days passed, with no word from her, Howard and Cindy started to get very worried. On April 9th, the couple decided to take action and contacted the police department to request them to do a wellness check on Margaret. 2 officers visited Margaret's house, knocked on the front door, and called out her name. But the silence was deafening. They entered the home and searched for signs of life of Margaret. The Ledgers were updated on the situation and were requested to help the officers with their search in Wadsworth. So they hit the road and started their 3-hour journey to their aunt's home. Tensions continued to rise with each passing minute, feeling like eternity. They were worried that something bad had happened to Margaret, and their nightmare was soon going to become a reality. Howard and Cindy finally arrived at the house, desperate for answers. Together with the officers, they searched all throughout the home for clues. Howard hoped his aunt had simply wandered off or just got confused while on her way home. But that hope was shattered into a million pieces when they discovered Margaret's lifeless body in her bedroom closet, hidden beneath a pile of clothes and a vacuum cleaner. The gruesome sight of his once loving aunt was ingrained in Howard's brain forever. After the body was found, the couple was escorted out of the house. The police began their investigation, determined to find the person responsible for this heartbreaking crime. But they would soon learn uncovering the truth would be far more challenging than they ever anticipated. When officers examined Margaret's body, they noticed severe physical trauma around Margaret's neck, suggesting that she died by strangulation, but to make things worse, her clothes were torn in some places, which indicated signs of sexual assault, and it was clear she'd been dead for several days. After recovering the body from the closet, the officers proceeded to inspect the interior of the house for any DNA samples or evidence that would lead them toward the suspect. But the crime scene was disturbingly clean, and nothing was found. This led the investigators to believe that this crime wasn't your typical home invasion gone wrong, but a calculated, cold-blooded attack on an innocent woman. Upon further inspection of the house, the officers discovered that the killer had taken Margaret's wallet and had discarded a plastic glove in the backyard. The glove became the officers' only hope of finding the killer, which they were going to use to match fingerprints with potential suspects that were soon going to pop into their radar. News of Margaret's brutal murder spread like wildfire through Wadsworth. How could someone so loved in a peaceful neighborhood have their life end in such a violent way? The sense of their security that once defined this town was now non-existent. As officers continued their investigation, they couldn't help but wonder, was the killer someone they all knew? The officers began questioning close family members and neighbors of Margaret. Among them, one man stood out the most, David, who had been Margaret's caretaker and part-time helper. David was taken in for questioning after he was found outside Margaret's home, suspiciously observing the officers conducting the investigation. He was an odd individual who revealed to police that he knew specific details about the murder, and even expressed fear that the cops would find his fingerprints inside the house. This odd behavior made him the prime suspect. But after matching fingerprints and verifying alibis, the case against David fell apart. He wasn't their man, leaving investigators back at square one. Just when it seemed like the case was slipping into cold case status, new leads were soon going to pop up. Months passed with little progress, but detectives refused to give up. They started examining reports of smaller crimes in Wadsworth, hoping that a minor lead might crack the case wide open. In October of the same year, a break-in was reported at a local construction site, and the suspect accidentally left their phone behind while escaping the premises. The officers tracked the phone to a man named Zachary, who was brought in for questioning. During the interrogation, Zachary confessed to the crime, but just when the officers were going to ask him about the murder of Margaret Douglas, Zachary revealed that the mastermind behind the robberies was his friend Gavon Ramsay, who he claimed was responsible for multiple small-time crimes in Wadsworth. At first, it seemed unrelated, but as officers dug deeper, they began to suspect that this new name, Gavon Ramsay, might be more than just a petty criminal. Could he be the key to solving Margaret's murder? But who was Gavon Ramsay, and why was he feared in his own community? Gavon Ramsay grew up in a normal home, but he was far from a normal child. From a young age, he caused trouble for his parents. He would yell, fight, and argue with his parents daily, leading his worried parents to seek help from therapists. But nothing seemed to work. As Gavon got older, things got worse. He started breaking the law. He vandalized multiple properties, but because he was young, he didn't face any real punishments. He would typically just receive a slap on the wrist or a long lecture on the consequences of his actions. This made him think he could do whatever he wanted without consequences. Gavon's crimes grew more serious. He began robbing gay men he met online and breaking into homes. He also took things from his victims as souvenirs. But that wasn't the worst of it. Gavon became interested in dead bodies in a disturbing way. He wrote about wanting to hurt and kill people in his journal. In 2017, Gavon tried to get a job at a funeral home. He wanted to touch and be near dead bodies. The funeral home rejected his job application because he was too young. But Gavon wasn't going to give up on his dark desires. Later, police brought Gavon in for questions about the break-in at the construction site that Zachary confessed to. His mom came with him because he was only 17. The police pushed him to talk, and Gavon admitted to some small crimes like carjacking a gay man. But when they asked about Margaret's murder, he said he didn't do it. The police did not believe him. They asked to look at his phone. What they found was shocking. There were pictures and videos of Margaret's lifeless body hidden in a folder called Dark. The password to that folder was murder. With this evidence, the police kept Gavon in custody. They demanded he tell the truth. Knowing he was caught, Gavon finally told them everything about the night Margaret died. A year after being turned away from the funeral home, Gavon came up with a horrifying plan. He decided it was time to commit murder. But he knew he needed to be careful to avoid getting caught. Gavon started scouting out potential victims. That's when he noticed his 98-year-old neighbor, Margaret Douglas. She lived just a few doors down from him and seemed like an easy target. Her house had no security, and no one else was ever around. So, one night, Gavon put his twisted plan into action. Under the cover of darkness, he slipped into Margaret's home through the back door. There she was, sleeping on the couch. Gavon could not believe his luck. Without hesitation, Gavon attacked Margaret. He pinned her down and began strangling her with his bare hands. After a brutal struggle, the life drained from her eyes. But Gavon was not done. He then took pictures and videos with Margaret's body in sexual positions, even going ahead with touching himself with the lifeless hands by using blackberry jam from her kitchen as lubricant. Gavon spent 2 brutal hours with Margaret's body, playing with her like a toy. Once he was done, Gavon stuffed the body inside the bedroom closet and left Margaret's house the same way he came in. When the police finally caught up with Gavon, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Photos, videos, Margaret's wallet in his bedroom, and even a confession proved his guilt. It felt like a slam dunk case, but would the courts agree? When the news broke that a 17-year-old had committed this brutal murder, people across the country were confused. How could someone so young do something so horrific? It was almost hard to believe. But the evidence was clear. Gavon Ramsay was guilty of the most unspeakable crimes: kidnapping, murder, and even violating the victim's body. The judge had no choice but to find him guilty on all counts. Gavon was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Margaret's family, it offered a small sense of justice, even though nothing could ever make up for their devastating loss. But then, a few years later, everything changed. The state of Ohio passed a new law that would allow juvenile offenders like Gavon to seek parole every 5 years. This meant the monster who took Margaret's life could one day walk free. Margaret's family was devastated. They could not believe the justice system was turning its back on them. How could he let this happen? Determined to keep Gavon locked up for life, the family took action. They went to the media, pleading with the public to understand the danger Gavon posed. He was a true predator, and he would not hesitate to kill again if given the chance. Unfortunately, the law still passed, but Margaret's family refused to give up. They vowed to be at every single parole hearing, ready to relive the trauma and to fight to ensure Gavon never sees the light of day. This is not just about justice for Margaret. It's about protecting the community from a dangerous criminal who's proven he has no remorse. Margaret's family is putting everything on the line to keep people safe. After deep diving into the murder of Margaret Douglas, we wonder, does being underage exempt a person from being convicted for committing murder? And is the legislation SB 256 doing more harm than good for society? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below.